Man, thanks for those of you who wore red today. I'm grateful for you, those that help bring Christmas, because I love this time of year. Do you love this time of year? Yes. I love this time of year. I love the lights. I love going and seeing lights. My kids don't care so much about that anymore, you know. Kids get older and they don't really care about seeing lights. And my wife was asking me the other day, she says, did you guys do things like that when you were growing up? And I don't remember doing a lot of that, but I also don't remember people going crazy on their houses with lights either. You know what I'm saying? So it was a little different. My wife grew up in Charlotte, and I don't know anybody from Charlotte here. And so Charlotte's got this area called McAdenville. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of it, but it's like one of the top 10 places to go see Christmas lights. And she grew up down the road from that. So they would drive every year and go to McAdenville and see Christmas lights. But we love this time of year. We love getting out to see Christmas lights. We actually love crowds. I don't know, do you love crowds? See, some of you are avoiding going out to this time of year because you hate crowds. How many of you have done all of your Christmas shopping online? Anybody just willing to admit that I've done all of it? Yeah, I haven't gone to one store. Wow, that's pretty good. It's pretty impressive. There's like 6 or 7 of you that have not gone out at all. So I like crowds. I love to go and be a part of this time of year. I love to watch people. Do you love to watch people? I love to watch the craziness of people as they frantically run around trying to find that Christmas present, that perfect Christmas present. And if your kids are like my kids or have been like my kids, they open it up and they don't care about it anyway. We have one particular child in our house. We have 5 kids, if you don't know that. So we have one particular kid that they'll get mad if it's not just the right thing. It doesn't matter if it's Christmas or birthdays. So we have to pull our kids aside every birthday and every Christmas. And we have to say, look, you're going to get a gift. And I don't care if you hate it. You're going to tell them you love it, and it's your favorite thing in the world. So just throwing that out there for my parents and Carrie's mom as well. So if our kids say that to you, that's why, if they put that fake smile on. But I love this time of year. I love just the reminder that Jesus came for us. And I know that it looks different, and some people want to, like you might be one of those that's standing against the commercialization of Christmas. And you're not going to buy any gifts. And, you know, that's your right. I mean, I'm not going to, judge you for that. But don't judge us either, for those of us who enjoy it. So, you know, just kind of keep that Scrooge mentality to yourself if you don't mind. That would be great. We would love to enjoy it. Christmas morning, I grew up Christmas morning in particular with, I have 2 older brothers. And so in our house, my older brother, he didn't care about it at all. I don't think he still cares about it. He probably doesn't wear red sweaters and that kind of stuff on Sundays. But I have the middle brother and myself, we would stay up all night. We would try to catch that guy, guy in the red suit. His name is Santa. I know we don't really talk about him in church. We don't really talk about him in the church building. We talk about him in the church because you're the church and, you whatever. So, but we used to stay up and try to figure this whole thing out and try to, deal with all of that type of stuff. And it was a lot of fun. We'd stay up and we'd play cards. And then we'd wind up falling asleep, and then we'd get up and there would be all these presents. And I loved it. And I still love it. I love getting up and seeing the look on my kids' faces as they get up on Christmas morning. We have one of our kids, not the same one who gets mad with the gifts, but another one. I don't know that he's going to go to bed Christmas Eve. I'm not real sure that we're going to probably give him a little, dose of some sleepy stuff. So, some of you are like, whoa. Welcome. Yeah, he's got allergies, really bad allergies. All right, so Travis is going to come back up. We're going to sing one more song, and we're going to get out of here. Do you do Elf on the Shelf? We have Elf on the Shelf. That's a new thing anymore, and my kids get up, and they want to look and find Elf. But the first thing my kids normally do each morning in December is they run for their Advent calendars. Do you do Advent calendars in your home? So we do Advent calendars. Our kids get up, and they run to the Advent calendar, and some of you are like, well, that finally he says something spiritual, that this Advent calendar. Don't think that. It's a chocolate calendar, so really they're just going to get the chocolate to eat it anyway. But I love Christmas. I love this time of year, and I love being reminded that God loved us enough, that God loves us so much that he cares so deeply for us that he chose to send Jesus. And not just that Jesus showed up, but that it meant enough that Jesus would come as an infant. I mean, think about that for just a minute. Think about just Jesus coming as an infant and the dependence that he had in that time. I mean, I don't know if you have infants in your home, but, you know, like the diapers and the feedings and the don't sleep. And I think some people want to think Jesus was this perfect baby, and he was perfect because he didn't have sin, but he was a baby. And so but I love the idea that God cared enough that he said, hey, I'm going to put this on display. I'm going to show you how much I love you, and I'm going to send Jesus into this world. And here's the thing, because I love this time of year, and I love what it means, and I love the lights and all of the stuff that comes with it. I know there's others who don't love this time of year. And maybe this year is particularly difficult for you, because maybe you're in a season that's harder than another season's been in your life. Because I know, and you probably know some people as well, that this year they've lost a loved one. And this is going to be their first Christmas alone. I know others who their marriage has fallen apart, and mom and dad have separated or divorced, and one of them's going to wake up Christmas morning alone. Maybe both of them. And those are challenging times. I know others who've lost a job. We talk about our economy being so strong, but there's some people who are still struggling today, and that's a challenge for them. They're not real sure how they're going to provide Christmas for their family and their kids. And so I get it. Like, I understand this is a difficult time of year, and the reality of it is, when you look in the pages of Scriptures, you can find that even when Jesus showed up in that season, that was an incredibly difficult time of year. If you have a copy of God's Word, I want to invite you to turn to the Gospel of Luke, chapter 1. And we're just going to look at this picture of what this looks like in the nation of Israel, in particular this one couple's life. So we're going to roll through it first. If you're new or kind of new around here, I just want to invite you. I'm going to be out on the side porch as you exit. So if you go out these doors as you leave today and just turn to the right, I'm going to be hanging out there. I'd love the chance to talk to you and hear about your story. Or, you know what, if you need prayer, I had a great opportunity to pray with someone this morning that's going through some difficult things. And I would just love to do that for you if you have a moment and can stop by. And hey, I've got some cookies for you as well, so that's always fun if you can stop by there. So, but difficult seasons come in people's lives, and really there's this difficult season, and it's a long, long, long season with the nation of Israel. And I love Old Testament history. I don't know if you've dug into a lot of Old Testament history, but there's a group of people, and really it's a nation in the Old Testament, of the nation of Israel, and the nation of Israel really had this special relationship with God. They would be called God's chosen people. And throughout the Old Testament, you see like God pouring favor upon the nation of Israel. God would fight for the nation of Israel. And these people saw God do incredible things on their behalf. All the way back even in the book of Exodus, when you begin to see what's happening, and they're in captivity in Egypt, right? And in Egypt, they wound up being in slavery and enslaved to the Egyptians. And then God's hearing the cries of his people. What a cool idea that is, the cool God hears your cries. Some days, doesn't it feel like God doesn't hear your cries? But he heard the cries of his people, and he showed up, and he said, listen, Moses, I want you to lead my people out of Egypt. And so he sends these 10 plagues upon Egypt, and Pharaoh finally lets the people leave, and then Pharaoh pursues them with his army, and they wind up at the Red Sea, and they got the Red Sea in front of them. They got Pharaoh's army coming behind them, and they're trying to figure out what's going to happen next. And some of them in their mind are thinking, you know what, we probably should just head on back. But God shows up in this incredible way with the nation of Israel, and it says that he parts the water. And I know some of you're trying to reason in your mind like, well, it was low tide, and because it was low tide, they could just walk across. I don't know if you've ever walked around at low tide, but it's not dry ground, and the scripture is very clear that they walked across on dry ground. 1 million people. It's a lot of people. And they're walking across. They get to the other side. And Pharaoh's army continues to pursue. Because God's favor was on the Israelites. As Pharaoh's army pursues, the walls of water cave in. We look back and we go, man, you know what, if I could see God do that kind of stuff. But the nation of Israel did, and then they would rebel and complain and whine, much like we do anyway. So I don't know that it would make that big of a difference, but wow. They wander around in the desert for 40 years. They finally get into the promised land. And God says, you know what, I'm going to give you Jericho. The first city that they're going to overtake as they're entering into the promised land. So all they have to do is march around the city. They march, and then the rest, they march. And then they march 7 times, and they blow the trumpets, and the walls come down. How neat. You know, you look at that story, and if you grew up in the church like I grew up in the church, you've heard that. But maybe that sense of awe and wonder needs to come back into your life where you can go, God did that. He did, and he did so much more. I mean, he fought for the Israelites going all the way into the promised land. God, city after city, nation after nation, God would just destroy them. And Israel would rebel, and God would be merciful. I mean, all of that stuff is happening till, and then God would raise up prophets who would call the nation back. But it got to a point where the nation stopped listening. And so God stopped speaking. God stopped speaking. God stopped showing up like he had shown up before. God didn't part the waters, and he didn't defeat the nations anymore on their behalf. God was just silent. There was no more, thus saith the Lord, coming from the prophets. And that went on for hundreds of years. Hundreds of years. And then you get to what we're celebrating at this time of year. At some point, in some way, God decided to break through the silence. And he decided to show up. And in Luke 1, we're going to pick up in verse 5. And it says, when Herod was king of Judea. Now, let me just throw this out there. This is free for Come Today because you need some free stuff. Herod is not a good dude. You know this, right? I don't know if maybe you don't, but Herod's not a good person. He's not a good king. He's not a good ruler from the sense that we would interpret. Now, he had done some good things, like the area had expanded and they had built buildings, and so they were thriving in some ways. But when he heard of this Jesus that was going to be born, he decided he was going to kill all of the children. So he's not a real good guy. So here's the thing, like when that stuff happens, and it will happen again, by the way. No, it's not something we want to think about. But there are going to be people who rise to power at some point in the future, somewhere in the world. And what are you going to do when things go sideways? Herod was king of Judea, but there was this Jewish priest named Zechariah. This is a great, great story. Zechariah, he was a member of the priestly order of Abijah. Please don't name your child. I think Zechariah is okay. Like, you can name him Zechariah. And his wife Elizabeth was also from the priestly line of Aaron. Now, the priestly line, they were a part of the nation of Israel that really had been set apart to minister, right, in the temple and before the Lord and on behalf of the nation. And so you have these two people, Zechariah and Elizabeth, and they had been faithful, they had been called, they had been set apart. In the priestly line. And then it says, Zechariah and Elizabeth were righteous in God's eyes. How great. That's so neat to think, like, These were people, these were some amazing people who were righteous. Like when God looked at them, when God saw Zachariah and Elizabeth, he's going, they are righteous. Now, there's not one of us in here that can be that are like that. They were careful to obey all the Lord's commandments and regulations, and they knew all of them. I mean, he's in the priestly line, so he knew all of those commands. He had them memorized. He had the scriptures memorized in the Old Testament. I mean, he got it, and so this is just a description of who they are and what they know. And so these are some key indicators. Like, this is somebody who walked with the Lord faithfully, even in the midst of a guy named Herod who was ruling out there, even in the midst of everything that was going on, even in the midst of God being silent. They continued to obey and do. They had no children. This is where it gets a little difficult. Because this from a cultural standpoint is a big deal. Because if you didn't have children in that culture, then people looked at you and they thought that you had done something that really angered God. And as punishment, you weren't allowed to have children. So it brought great shame on you. So they had no children because Elizabeth was unable to conceive. And now it gets into this description, and they were both very old. But they were faithful. Even when things didn't turn out the way that you thought they would turn out, they were faithful. Even when God was silent in the midst of everything that you had faced and everything that you were going through, they were faithful. They kept walking with God, even when this happened. And I don't know if you know people like this, but I know some folks that would just like to throw in the towel. I'm done. I thought God, fill in the blank, and he hasn't. And so I thought he loved me. I thought he cared about me, and yet I don't have any children. So what's up with that? But not Zachariah and Elizabeth. They just kept going, kept pursuing, kept following God, even though now they got to this place where they were both very old. And it goes on, verse 8. It says, one day Zechariah was serving God in the temple as he did as often as he was called on to do that. For his order was on duty that week. And so they had this whole system and structure where they'd serve and they'd be there for a season, a period of time, a week right here. They were there all the time, serving, doing whatever needed to be done around the temple. And that was what he was doing. And so verse 9, he goes on, and was the custom of their priest, he was chosen by lot. Now, this is like rolling the dice. I don't know another way to describe it than that, and I know some of you are like, well, I can't believe that they would do that. Well, they did, and they believed that God was in this. Like somehow they believed that when they rolled the dice, and if you picked number 4 and number 4 showed up, God was in that, and so boom, here you are. And so that's what happened with Zechariah. He was number 3 maybe, and he chose 3, and there it was. His lot was drawn to enter the sanctuary of the Lord and burn incense, which is this really special opportunity. And not everybody got a chance to do this, but he got the chance to do that, and he would get to be there by himself in the temple. And he goes on and says, while the incense was being burned, a great crowd stood outside, and they were praying. So people had gathered in this temple courtyard, and they were out there. They were waiting for Zechariah. They knew Zechariah was in there. He was burning the incense and taking care of the priestly duties that he had to take care of. And this crowd had gathered outside, and I don't know what that prayer looked like, but I'll bet they're just out there praying, and maybe some of them aren't praying, and they're talking, and maybe they're waiting in anticipation of Zechariah coming back out. But something happens that doesn't normally happen. God broke through the silence. As the people are out there praying, it says, while Zechariah was in the sanctuary, an angel of the Lord appeared to him standing to the right of the incense altar. Oh! He's in there, he's taking care of the things that he's supposed to take care of, and maybe he's doing this thing, and it's like, whew, angel shows up. But they hadn't heard from God in 400 years. That's a long time. I'm not even sure in our minds that we can't really wrap our head around eternity. We can't even wrap our head around 400 years. But they hadn't heard from God in 400 years. And here's Zechariah in his old age. Still faithful, still walking with God, still waiting, still anticipating, still doing what he was told to do. And as he's burning that incense, this angel shows up. Zechariah was shaken for good reason. He was overwhelmed with fear when he saw him. Fear not. There's this sense of awe and wonder in that too. You know, we're told to fear the Lord in the Scriptures. And with that comes this awe and wonder, his majesty and who he is. And so he's overwhelmed with fear when he saw him. And then he goes on. But the angel said, don't be afraid. Standard angel greeting. Zechariah, here's another deal, right? God has heard your prayer. Some of you this morning just need that. I know you're wanting the angel to show up and for the angel to speak into your circumstances and go, God has heard your prayer. But God has heard your prayer. He's heard your prayer. Even when, for you, it may have been a faint little whisper like, God, if you're listening, God, if you even care. God heard his prayer. Your wife, Elizabeth, will give you a son, and you are to name him John. What? He says this, he goes on, this is still the angel talking. You will have great joy and gladness, and many will rejoice at his birth, for he will be great in the eyes of the Lord. He must never touch wine or other alcoholic drinks. We just throw that in there because he's Baptist. John the Baptist. I think that's where Baptist comes from, right there. Then we get a little Pentecostal in here. He's going to be filled with the Holy Spirit even before his birth. And so it's this mix of things in there. So he'd be filled with the Holy Spirit even before his birth. And he goes on, and he will turn many Israelites, this entire nation, this entire group of people that used to be, they were God's chosen people, that he's going to turn them back to the Lord. How great is that? He will be a man with the spirit and power of Elijah. They knew Elijah. So a priest in the order of Zechariah, he's going to know Elijah. He's going to know the story of Elijah, all of those great Old Testament pictures of Elijah. And he said he will prepare the people for the coming of the Lord. He goes on, he's not finished. He will turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and he will cause those who are rebellious to accept the wisdom of the godly. And that's the end of what the angel's saying. And Zechariah's going, are you sure the right guy's in here? Because there's another priest, and his name is Zacharias, and he's only 35. I'm making that up, by the way, so don't. Zacharias said to the angel, how can I be sure this will happen? Good question, isn't it? I think it's fair. It's a fair question. I'm an old man now, and my wife, he gets politically correct on this, and my wife is also well along in years. She's not an old lady, it's not what he says. She is also well along in years, and so he goes there. So how do I know this? And I love this response by the angel. The angel said, I am Gabriel. I am Gabriel. I stand in the very presence of God. It was he who sent me to bring you this good news. You remember in the Old Testament, it used to be, thus saith the Lord. It's kind of like Gabriel's doing that. It's like, I'm Gabriel. I stand, I'm coming from the very presence of God. So you can pretty much interpret this as, thus saith the Lord. But now, since you didn't believe what I said, you will be silent and unable to speak until the child is born. Some of you are sitting there going, I would be silent too, because I would have said a whole lot worse than Zechariah said if that was the case. For my words will certainly be fulfilled at the proper time. There's just something about time in the whole deal. I mean, Galatians 4 talks about at the appointed time, God sent forth his Son. Because God has these moments and days and years, and they're fixed. This is a fixed moment in time when God knew that Zechariah would be in the temple. He goes to Gabriel. It's time to go. Go tell him that he's going to have a son. His name's going to be John. And Gabriel, I don't know what Gabriel said, if he just went or if he went, like, are you sure that you want me to go to Zechariah? I mean, he's old and his wife is well advanced in years, and so I'm not sure that they're going to receive this news very well. But he went, and he did, and he gave this word to Zechariah. And Zechariah, in that moment, he just was like, are you sure you're talking to the right person? And I look at that and I think that's a fair question. I haven't heard anything from the Lord. I don't know, I'm 90, 95. I haven't heard anything. We know that God's been silent for 400 years. And this angel's going to show up while I'm serving the Lord in the temple. And I'm just supposed to take his word for it. Because we've been wanting a child. I mean, we got married. We were, 18 years old. God, where have you been for the other, 70 years of my life? Because we've been asking and waiting and wanting and longing, and we've got nothing. Some of you feel that way. God, I've been asking. I've been waiting. I've been longing. And in my mind, I doubt. I wonder, God, do you even care? God, do you even love me like you say you do? Because I don't feel it right now. God said, I'm going to close your mouth, Zechariah, until your day that your son is born. Now, here's the deal. Let's finish reading this real quick because we're running out of time. Meanwhile, the people were waiting for Zechariah to come out of the sanctuary. Remember, they were outside the temple court. They're out there praying and praising and whatever it is that they've got going on, because he's been in there a little while by this point. They're wondering, why in the world is he taking so long? That's my paraphrase of this. He goes on, he says, when he finally did come out, he couldn't speak. He couldn't say anything to them. So he can't come out and just go, hey, let me just tell you what just happened. I had this really awesome deal. Did you guys see the glow of the angel? Did you see? No, he couldn't say anything. Then they realized from his gestures, so he's playing, that game, in his silence, that he must have seen a vision in the sanctuary. Yes. When Zechariah's week of service in the temple was over, he returned home. He goes on and says, soon afterward, his wife Elizabeth became pregnant and went into seclusion for 5 months. And then the last verse for this morning, this is how kind the Lord is. She exclaimed, he has taken away my disgrace of having no children. Now here's the thing that you need to know, and I just want to give you two things to walk away with today. She gives birth to a son. And everybody's trying to figure out what they're going to name him. What are we going to call him? And Zechariah says, writes it, his name is John. And in that moment, he's able to speak. Why? Not just because the angel promised, but because it was in that moment that he believed. It was in that moment when he said, I believe. Nobody's coming up with another name. We're not going to call him Elijah. We're not going to call him Moses. We're not going to call him Noah. Nope. His name is John. Because I believe in what the angel had promised. And here's the thing. John is going to announce to the world that Jesus is going to show up. So God broke through 400 years of silence to speak to a priest who's going to have a son who's going to announce that God's going to show up in the flesh, that the Messiah is going to come. The fulfillment of thousands of years of anticipation is going to be born to a virgin named Mary. And John is going to announce to the world that he is the Messiah. And it's a promise that God is not going to leave us, that God is not going to abandon us, that even on the darkest days, even on the days where we feel like we are all alone, God sent forth his Son as a reminder. We started this series, Emmanuel, God with us. And I introduced this word, and I know it's funny and we laugh, but I introduced this word, witness. And I want you to know, witness. Because I don't want you to doubt when you're going through those darkest days, in those darkest hours, when everything else seems to be falling apart, when the wheels seem to be coming off, and you're going, God, where are you? I'm with you. I am with you. I am here. I came, and you can live, that's the idea, in a state of being with him, even on the darkest days. Here's the thing, witness finds hope in God rather than our circumstances. It's so easy. I know, it's so easy. We get focused on our circumstances and we lose sight of the fact that God is with us. I know you've lost a job, you've lost a loved one, the doctor called, you got kids that are rebelling against you, your grandkids won't talk to you. I understand all those things, but listen. God is with you. When you chose to believe in Jesus for that very first time, God showed up into your life. He says, I'm walking with you. I'm here, thick and thin, good and bad. I am with you. There's this quote that I want to share with you, and it starts out like this. It says, your value, significance, and hope is not found in what you do, but rather with whom you do it. Isn't that great? Just this idea that so many of us are finding significance and hope in what we do. And listen, if that's you, if your hope is found in maybe even being a father or a mother, your hope is found in your job, or your hope is found in what people think of you, your hope is based in this, then they're going to let you down, right? You're going to lose your job and something's going to happen in your marriage or whatever. And this is the thing, but rather with whom? Who are you walking through these things with? And Jesus is going, I am with you. God in flesh, I showed up to be with you. This quote goes on to say this. The call to live in continual communion with God. That's what I'm going to use as witness. Continual communion with God means that every person's life, no matter how mundane, is elevated to sacred heights. And here's the thing, in whatever circumstances they find themselves in, whatever, name it, write it down. What are you going through? No matter what the circumstances are that they find themselves in or walking through, they have hope. Hope. Why? Because of their continual communion with God. They have hope because of witness with him. God showed up, and God will show up in your life, and God will walk with you in the deepest, darkest valleys. I know you're searching for him on the mountaintops. We were talking about this the other day as a staff. You're searching for him on the mountaintops. But you want to know something? You're mostly going to find God in the valley. And you need to be reminded that he's there, that he hasn't left you. He hasn't abandoned you. He has not forsaken you. And that's the good news. So here's my invitation. Some of you this morning, you haven't gotten to that place where you've believed in and are following Jesus. And I just want to make that as an invitation to you this morning. So if you guys would bow your heads and close your eyes. If you've never taken a moment to choose to believe in and follow Jesus, and today's the day that you want to do that. Listen, it's not a magic prayer. It's just choosing to believe. Jesus says, believe, believe, believe. Whoever believes in me. And if you want to choose today to believe in and follow Jesus, I'm going to count to 3, and I'm just going to ask you to shoot your hand up in the air. And then Matt will have some instructions for you as we close. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Anybody, just put your hand up in the air. Thank you. God, you're good and kind and right, and we thank you that you're with us, that you came, that you cared enough, that you loved us enough, that you came in the flesh. And we don't have to doubt or wonder where you've been any longer, because you're right here with us. And it's in Jesus' beautiful name we pray. Amen.